thing or?
No, there you go. I've placed it back on. Hopefully you can see my screen. So actually, one of the things I really want to talk to you about is the love of why we love them. So we asked you to do that Mentimeter so that you can give us you'll share your thoughts and purposes. And I then wanted to tell you why I love a good community practice. We'll go on later to talk about the history of what community is, and then there's some very interactive pieces that we want you to get involved in, and then when we come to the end of the talk, we'll get you to ask us any questions. So as you can see on this lovely slide, I hope that you can all see it, there's lots of varying different pieces of pictures there and lots of commentary, and this is the reason why I love them. I love a good community of practice because I've always been in one. I've been in one since I was in the army. I've been in one with my dad in the army, a big Italian family. And what lots of people don't know about a good community of practice is actually they are already existing in them without them realizing that they're in a community of practice and what a community of practice actually physically is. So I love them because they help us, support us and guide us, and they give confidence and motivation in our domain. They help us grow and learn skills and get better at what we do because we're sharing that knowledge. They help us create better practices for all because we are deep diving all of those different kind of talks, books that we read with inside that community practice. It helps us collaborate with everybody because we have a shared understanding. It gives us common approaches across all our teams. It helps us grow, learn, helps us grow our skills. It helps us get better at what we do. We understand our mastery just a little bit better. And it also helps us then share our knowledge and join up related work that we do with inside our organisations, as well as if you are in a community practice outside of work, which I'll come to talk about shortly.
Shelby.
Of course, Haroon, hello.
So I was going to say, there's a few people just commenting. Is it possible to go full screen on your slides? Right. The bottom right.
Oh, it is. Yes, sorry. Apologies, everyone. Oops, I have gone forward one. Can you all see that now? Is that better?
No, it's still showing it's basically showing your screen to the left. So I think you got to press the.
So I think you're sharing your PowerPoint screen, and once you go into presentation mode, you need to share the other screen.
Bear with me.
Magic of Zoom.
Is that better?
Fantastic.
Perfect.
So as I was trying to show you, there's lots of pictures there on the left, and they are things like the top ones are all my community practices that I've been involved in work. I'm in a rugby club, so that's a community of practice. My family are there. As you can see, they're a great big Italian family. So you will see that there's quite a lot of different sharings going on there. I'm part of the Agile 20 reflection community practice. And at the bottom is a picture of my dad that you can't see, but that's his army days. And actually, that's probably where my community practice is born out of love for community practice. I've always been in one without realizing, and part of my white paper study shows that we are physically, through school, through education, through universities, into work life, we will always be part of a community of practice. They just may be called by something completely different. And then on the right hand side in all my bubbles are the reasons why I really love them and what they can do for us. Haroon, do you have any similar experiences to that?
Yeah, I do actually. Very similar. Nowhere near as fun as your one. You got some really cool ones. I used to be part of, well, still am actually part of Scrum Master communities of practice. They're called Scrum clinics, I believe, globally, and I am so passionate about them because I learn about things and I can share things with other people, and that sharing of knowledge, tacit or otherwise, really helps, grow an environment and cultivate an environment of help and support. I'm also part of communities of practice in my social life. So I'm part of visual thinking circles, where I help how to draw or sketch things for very local, grassroots communities who are not privileged enough to know about the art of visual thinking, and just getting them together sometime. And that's really inspired by a lot of the movements, social movements out there. But yeah, I mean, I can relate to everything that you just mentioned about creating better practices. It's not having about the best practice, but having better practices, and that's the very, very important, I think, to me, my personal growth and to grow the community around me. It's very, very important to have a healthy ecosystem. Whatever you do, give back to the community in whatever form you can.
Yeah, and totally. And as we go through this talk, you know, you might have those light bulb moments that make you realize that actually outside of work, where you would, in the agile realms that we kind of live and breathe in, you would probably expect a community practice or a guild or a tribe to be doing this type of sharing, communication, learning from each other. But actually outside in your work, if you know, in your personal life, you can belong to a photography club, and that's a community practice, just not called it in its domain. It could just be called, you know, a meetup, a gathering, a collection of people meeting. I'm just having a coffee with a bunch of people that I've got a similar interest or intent with, sharing some knowledge with. So actually that then brings us on to the history of community practice. And as I started studying what this kind of meant to me and what they mean to the communities that I live in, I kind of stumbled across a very brilliant gentleman and his wife. So Etienne Wenger, his book is, and his website are detailed below. I do a lot of work with Etienne. Him and his wife are just awesome people. They basically started out as being anthropologists and got together while studying apprenticeships for learning models. So their concept of community practices was sort of picked up and made a relatively new term and phenomenon as we know it in the agile realm, only sort of in the last sort of 50 years, maybe less, with Etienne. He kind of has done a lot of history on looking where they come from and looking at the social sciences versions of why the concept of communities, you know, they vary, what the purpose is and what the primary concepts and theories they are from. But basically, once the concept was sort of there out in the world, that it came from a learning and a set of complex social relations through work, living, life, journey. He then started to cultivate the idea that actually this is a collective, and this is how a community of practice then sort of became its own ecosystem. I wholly recommend you go to Etienne's website. It's full of great material that will give you some really good ideas around the history of what a COP is, where it came from, what it means to us as human beings, and how we can really cultivate them to support us, motivate us as individuals, and then help us within our working practice. They are really, there's some of the people out there. Emily Webber is another great lady who also does some really great work around communities practice. She also has a book out that's called Communities Building Successful, couldn't get that word out, Successful Communities of Practice. But basically, you know, this history has been steeped. It's not just in this century that we look at these communities that we have. They run hundreds of years. You know, if you go back to the Knights Templar, that actually was a community, and it had and we call it a community of practice because it had a relative connection to learning something or protecting something and sharing an experience. And really, that is what a great community of practice is all about. That shared domain, mastery, purpose of the existence of something that we understand or something that we want to learn about. So that's some of the history of what it is. Then we actually should explore going into what a physical community means to people. And Etienne and lots of other people have kind of categorized it into three elements that constitute a community practice. And this is where these can really help us within our organizations and or individually outside of work. So we look at a community and they have a bit of structure around them. They have a domain. So that domain is a community of practice, is a club of friends, as I say. You have people that you meet or people in work that you have a shared domain interest with, and therefore you will collectively come together to talk about your domain interest. So if it's Scrum Mastery, you will all talk about Scrum Mastery, and therefore you have a shared set of competencies that distinguishes each other in that kind of group. You also then have a community. So this is you as a community, you will pursue your interests and your knowledge, and you will have discussions and activities inside your community around your domain and what your interest is. And then you kind of will build up your community practice and add more people to it as you keep on going along and learning about what your community is there for. You'll have lots of different interactions. So this, as Agile 20 Reflection is a community of practice in itself, The interactions are there on a weekly, daily, monthly basis. You are communicated to. There's the trustees meet up to go through a backlog and do all the good stuff, refinement planning. The advisors are there to kind of guide us. These are people that maybe have not, they don't want to come into the community practice, but they are willing to help us shape it. And you can meet anywhere in that community. So that the idea is that people assume naturally that community of practice is something that's in your workspace or in your work, living life, but actually it's not. These interactions inside that community can be in a cafe, in the park, at a social club, in a nightclub, because they're trying to bring together a commonality of why you want to talk about your domain and what your interest is. Then it splits out to the third element, which is the practice itself. So, you know, it's not about just meeting up and having a conversation about UX or Scrum mastery. It is about coming together to have a shared repertoire of resources, experience, stories, tools, and ways of working. So I can tap into that and have a good conversation with a stranger that's been to a conference or read a book, and that can then aid me with learning. So given that you put them nicely together, it enables community practice and that group of people to share a common passion for something that you do. And some of you will probably do it regularly, and some of you will interact regularly with loads of different people and not realize that that is what a community of practice it actually physically is. So my computer now decides to play funny games with me. So on that note, I'm going to kindly hand over back to Haroon. We've got some interaction stuff now that we're going to just kindly walk through. Now we've explained sort of what those three elements constitute. It's on my slide pack, which I will happily share afterwards, and will, as I said, will be on our Agile 20 Reflect Hub for you to tap into as well.
Thank you for that amazing introduction into communities of practice, Shelby. It's brilliant actually that you're in touch with Etienne Wenger. You know, he's absolutely, you know, remarkable in his research and studies around this work. So folks, we're obviously not going to make this a session where we're just speaking about stuff. We want to learn about stuff together. So we are now going to go into breakout rooms. So I'm going to request actually, Shelby. For some reason I can't put people into breakout rooms. If you can you?
I can indeed. Yeah, I will create them for you now. If
we can do, how many we've got 33 people or 30 people, right? So if we do groups of let's do groups of 4. It's far more interesting, isn't it? We do groups of 3, but let's do groups of 4. And what I'm going to do, folks, is I'm just going to paste in the chat group a Google Jamboard, and hopefully you can all you know, easily access that. If you cannot access that, then actually, in fact, don't try, actually you can access that. Yeah, if you can access that, brilliant. We've got 3 things that we would like to invite you to, and there's let me just share my screen so you can see. Those of you, hopefully most of you have used Jamboard. If you haven't, I'm going to take a wild bet and assume that someone in that group would have used it. If you haven't, it's very straightforward. Use a sticky note on the left hand side, your legend, and you can type some blurb in there, and you can hit save after you've clicked it, and it will automatically display on the Google Jamboard, and you can move the ticket wherever you want to. So we've got 3 very, very simple questions really. One is, do you have COPs outside of work, and what are the benefits? Thinking back, have you always been in a community of practice? And then slide number 3. So slide number 2 is the link that I'll send you. But if you click on the next one, which is next frame, there's a question which is thinking. Actually, I know what I've just done there. Ignore that one. Really slide 2, right? So the first one is, do you have a community of practice? In fact, I'm going to put down inside or outside of work, because many of you might not be part of COPs outside of work. And just explore that a little bit within your group. And I think there was a couple of questions actually in the chat group. And what we're going to do, if it's okay with you, we won't answer them directly now, but if they don't get answered by the end of the session, we do have some time towards the end to maybe help answer a couple of those questions, because we've got some really good juicy questions there about COIs, or communities of interest versus communities of practice, and what's the difference? Can you distinguish them, kind of thing. Explore that in your breakout rooms. And can we put the breakout rooms to 8 miners? Or we're thinking 10 minutes, but if we do 8 minutes, time Yeah, and then what we'll do is we'll come back from the breakout rooms. Can I request that maybe one person in the group just feeds back the observation, maybe about what you discussed? But we're going to share the Google Jamboard anyway. So all your work, hopefully, all your conversations, try to put them on the Jamboard. We will really appreciate that feedback and hopefully learn together. So take it away, Shelby.
Fab. Okay.
I'm guessing that's worked.
I'm assuming so.
Okay, so yes, everyone should get a prompt to say join breakout room. Do you want to go to the breakout room as well, Shelby? Should I go to the breakout room as well? Or shall I stay here?
We pop in and out.
Yeah, I might do that actually. I'll just what I might do, I'll just stay here in case if someone comes on the main.
I'll pop in and out.
Cool. I'll stay in the main area to keep just in case if someone needs any help. Sometimes it's quite fun, isn't it, not knowing what's going to happen. Just letting people just organize themselves and see what happens. Oh yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
Into rooms.
Okay. I'm going to just jump into room 1 in just a moment.
Coolio. I think it's a group here, isn't it? Is that right?
Oh, hi everyone. Yes. So I'm going to come out. I'm going to go into room 2 then. Bear with me.
So okay. Melanie, Bryn, and User, are they in the group as well, Shelby? Or are they in this group, or how does that work?
That's in. I'm trying to get into a different room, and also all good things. It's not allowed. It's all. Oh no, that's what I need to do. Right, I'm going to disappear. Just 2 seconds.
No worries. See you there. Hi, Bryn and User. You are mid-work day here in BC Canada, so can't really actively participate listening in. Not a problem, Bryn. I don't know if you've opted to go into a group or not, but this is the main area, so not much discussion happening here. Unfortunately, I'm just the facilitator, or if people get missing. User, are you able to go to any breakout room?
Muted. I'm muted. I'm waving at you, but I'm muted. Hi, Haroon.
Sorry, I can see you now. How are you? I can hear you now.
I'm really, really good. I'm just going to jump quickly into another room, and then should we give it another 2 minutes, and then?
Yeah, sounds good. I think we're on time, aren't we? So we got until 7:30?
Yeah, 7:30. Fab. I'm just going to quickly jump into another room and just say hello. Pop my head in and say hello.
Yeah.
Let's pop to this one. Some really great conversation.
Nice.
Hi, user, and hi. Is it Bryn?
I think Bryn messaged on the chat group to say that she is listening in. She's not particularly actively participating because she is at work as well. It's a different time
Different time zones.
Different time zones, yeah.
It's amazing.
I think she's in Canada for the Canada.
Wow.
About listening in. So
I used to live in Canada when I was about 6 months old. I used to live in an army base called just near a place called Medicine Hat.
Oh wow.
Oh yeah. I'll jump in for a second here just to say hi. So I
hi.
Feel too creepy listening. But yeah, I'm in a coordinator role back here in Vancouver, so my phone is pretty often on and off. So I didn't want to take that away from any groups.
I can imagine. Yeah, I used to live in Medicine Hat when I was
That's a cold place to be right now.
I would imagine it probably is right now. I always get told stories by my family that when my mum and dad were there with the forces, that they quite often used to leave me out on the balcony in like -6.
Oh wow.
I know. I was like, no wonder I hate the cold nowadays.
No, I'm from the East Coast, Halifax, Nova Scotia, and I moved to the other side of the country to get away from that kind of cold.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I bet. So, but it is cold. It snowed yesterday here in South Wales. So I live in South Wales in the UK, and it was snowing yesterday. But we don't get it as bad as say Scotland and the north of England. I would say they tend to get it quite bad. But Wales, it's just mostly rain.
I hear that in Vancouver, much the same.
Mostly rain. I just need a sunny holiday. I just need to go to the beach with a lot of sun and just drink cocktails and eat cheese and not think about anything.
Good place to be.
It's a very good place to be. Right. Should we call
Thanks so much for hosting, guys.
No, thank you. Okay, so
yeah, if you could bring everyone back in, I think you might have a 60-second thing, I think, on there, but hopefully.
So it just goes 60-second.
I think if you've answered the next slide, which I thought they might do it later, but we've already started to talk about how do we cultivate environments. That's okay.
Yeah.
So good.
Which I love.
Yeah.
It's a great one to talk.
Absolutely. Let me just double check.
Okay.
The Jamboard is plugged. It's got loads.
Is it?
Yeah, it looks really good. Yeah, look at it.
Awesome.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So you want conversations?
Yeah. Okay. Ready?
Yeah.
I got a second. 1 minute now, and they come back in. Straight back to yourself, my lovely.
Oh yeah, it's straight through, isn't it? Let me just share my screen then. Hello, everyone.
Everyone's coming back in. Thank you.
Sorry, I came in too early.
Oh no, it's okay.
Big button came up on us.
There has to be one. There has to be one, isn't it, Ish?
There's a big blue button, and I thought I've got to press that. It said leave meeting or breakout. Got it, mate. Got it.
It's all good.
Brad, I'm so sorry for dropping it early, mate. Sorry, buddy.
No, it's okay. Thank you for joining. It's an absolute pleasure to see you here, along with everyone else. Brilliant. So I'm guessing we've got everyone back. Is that right? Everyone's back in the group. So thank you, everyone, for having some conversations about this thing called communities of practice, and thank you for sharing. So just sharing my screen, and what I would like is anyone to go first. So remember, you all were in groups, so just share. I can't remember who group 1 was, to be honest with you, Shelby. So I'm gonna give it a guess, right? And whoever wants to go first, they can begin, and then we'll just see what happens. So can I request that you're very brief and just share, within 30 to 45 seconds, what you discovered in your breakout room? What were you discussing? And just share a few observations, please. Anyone can start.
Haroon, do you want me to go first?
Go for it, Ish.
Yeah, cheers, buddy. So we had a couple on our left-hand side here. I'm just going to go to my screen so I can use my laser pointer. We're Scrum Masters. So the question was, do you have inside or outside communities of practice at work? What are the benefits? Scrum Masters learning, sharing, safe space to ask questions and mourn. Women in Agile groups, shared learning, Reflect 20, learning, sharing, connecting. One guest in our group said, one of the benefits of these sort of groups was to have self-acceptance, same language, helps with imposter syndrome, meeting like-minded people. We also had, is that it? Did we have more? Here's one here, which was, we had an American lady on our channel, our breakout, Women in Agile in the USA, playing games, adapting games, making them online, etc. Breakout, a lot of learning stuff going on. That's that question there, Haroon. Do you want me to continue with the other 2 slides, or are you okay?
No. I think that was it. I mean, if you can share about what you thinking back about communities of practice, Have you always been part of a community of practice? Was that something that was discussed in your group as well?
Yeah, we managed to do, well, didn't do a huge amount of discussion, but we did drop a few things. Yes, sports, religious, cultural. I put one down which was connecting with kids, friends, parents. Does that make sense? Not kids, but kids.
Yeah.
Because I haven't got time for real friends, I've got to go with their friends' dads, right?
You got to friends, yeah. Or your kids' friends' parents normally.
Yeah. And we managed to take it onto the slide 3. If you can forward the slide.
Oh, actually, do you know, we'll come to that in just a moment. User error on my side. I was hoping no one saw that, but that's for the latter part. But thank you for sharing that. Would anyone else like to go? We want to hear any other room want to share what was going in your room?
Maybe I'll go. Oh, okay. Go ahead, Liz. Go ahead.
Thank you. So this is Liz. I was in room 3, and we put a couple of items on the first screen regarding different kinds of communities of practice that hadn't come up prior. So test automation, someone was involved in that as a thing, and then also a change management group that was pretty successful. And the person that spoke to that was really had a really good experience, and there was lots of learning and sharing there. We ended up for the second question, we ended up sort of talking a little bit about psychological safety being a factor of communities of practice, and how kind of there are different groups or ways to be in learning environments that may not have that as a basic principle. And so, like, one of the things that I was thinking about was the old style of a user group, where maybe it was one person who was the expert or a couple of people that did all the talking, and it wasn't that sense of community and we're all in here and there's, everyone's invited to participate. So that was kind of what we ended up going a little bit deeper on. And then we were trying to figure out where that Venn diagram of like, what's a community, what's the domain, there's a thread there of like what counts as a community of practice and what doesn't, and sort of trying to dissect that a little bit.
Lovely.
I'm sorry, Haroon, I'm going to joke quickly. That's a really good point. Especially when we come on to talk a little bit later on around organizations. Actually, that's a really good point about what it means and what it means to an organization, especially because organizations feel it means around money. Okay, so we'll Haroon and myself will talk about that a bit later on, but that's a really good point.
And just sort of to dovetail on that, Shelby, that one of the other things that was common was supporting a community of practice in a culture that's not really in favor of like it's not striving to be a learning environment. And so trying to sustain something where people keep getting pulled away to do work and hit deadlines or whatever, and that time and space isn't well preserved.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Really appreciate your observations there. Thank you for sharing. Would anyone else like to go next? We've had 2 groups so far have shared. Charlotte, you were going to say something.
So in our group, actually, we started with finding some of the user groups that we did at work, or out inside or outside of work, because we've got the Scrum user group also from South Africa. And then we started thinking about, hey, what about Scouts or the boat club or whatever we did outside, like music and like basically anything where we share that common interest and the practice that we do. And we also talked about the book clubs, and then the discussion went into, okay, but what brings it? Because for instance, with the Scout and with other, it's about sharing skills and sharing things that we can use later on. And then we had a wonderful discussion where we imagined that actually it could maybe be a memory of it could date back to the tribal moments around the campfire where we shared our stories. When we're hunting a mammoth, and then we had to tell that the rest of the tribe so that they could remember it and take lessons from that. So that was a really beautiful discussion. And then we also, like on the other part, whether we've always been in the community of practice, this was like an interesting question, because it was like, okay, what makes a community of practice? It's, you know, faith groups, religious groups. Is it like, you know, do we meet because of the faith, because of the friends, because both? You know, it's, yeah, it was a great conversation. And if I have omitted anything, I'm shouting out for support from room 2.
Lovely,
I
lovely.
think you said it really well, Charles.
Thanks, Judy.
Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you for the observation. I love that. Yeah, it's all intertwined, isn't it? There's a lot of intertwining going on between COPs and communities of practice. Which one do we fall under, faith groups or this group? Can you be more than one? Absolutely. Would anyone else like to go next? So we had a few groups to share. Are there any groups missing they'd like to share? I think we're done. Cool. So, Shelby, what is a community of practice? This segues nicely into the presentation. So I'm just going to stop sharing for just a moment. I want to go on mute, and over to you, Shelby. What is a community of practice?
So actually, a community of practice is everything that we have discussed and more. A community of practice is around, and the difference, and I'll come to talk about the communities of interest, because I know that was in the topic. So community of practice really is about us using our domain knowledge. So for example, me as an Agile coach, I'm in a domain of fellow Agile coaches, and a community is about coming together, trust, support, motivate individuals within inside that. It's also a benefit to your organization, which we will shift into a bit more later. I won't spoil Haroon's talk a bit about that, but it enables a great personal growth. It enables positive relationships with others. It builds your network. It helps you to grow. It helps you to master your urge to get better at something. It cultivates people's trains of thoughts and how they can participate within inside their organization. And really the pinnacle of a great community of practice actually is happier and more motivated people, because they are learning and they are sharing with other humans, and they have that real connection with other people to share the domain knowledge. And inside that, then there becomes growth. So growth within yourself and growth within inside your job role, and that then masters that community of practice. Now, where they differ from a community of interest, a community of interest is the main difference is that actually we practice. So we practice it. We're practicing to have an interest in something. So I have an interest in mental health, but I don't practice it. So I'm physically in a community of practice. The main difference is that we physically practice this in our everyday lives, in our job roles, in people that we meet. So we practice what we, almost that saying goes, so we practice what we preach. So good community practice is always all of that. It's positive relationships, it's growth, it's enablement for your organization, it's mastery, it's also purpose, the purpose and yearning to do better, to be better, to provide something better for the organization or the people that we support and motivate with in our circle of life or circle of work. They also then are things like, they do provide you with more mastery, they do provide you with that purpose, and they do also provide you with more autonomy, because you are learning and growing and sharing with inside that community of practice.
Shelby, quick question. Are you sharing your screen, or are you not sharing?
I'm not sharing my screen. I've gone completely off piece and not decided to share my screen.
Good on you. I just wanted to double check.
Sorry, I'm just going to end my show. But yes, that is simply what it is. There's no, there's no complex ingredients to them. There's no, we shouldn't make them complicated. It is simply that we want to start up a community to share a practice or learning with somebody that has that same feel about it, or what's the word I'm looking to, same kind of collaboration content that they want to be part of. They have the same check that they want to, journey that they want to go on of self-acceptance and understanding the world that they live in, and share it then with their organisation and the people they live in. So it's a circle. I definitely, for me, I'm going right back now. For me, it's definitely been a circle. I have been in communities all my life. My family is a massive Italian family. They love wine, so we got vineyards. So I know how to what a good grape looks like. So that's a community. My dad was armed forces, so that was a community. I have more aunties and uncles than I care to consider, but they all learnt me something. They all, we collectively come together when my dad, when all the army men went off to what they called tours of duty, they collectively would come together as aunties, learning us how to cook, learning us how to clean, sharing how, all did our homework together. Then in school, I had believe it or not, I was going to be an architect. I joined the outside school club of wanting to learn about history and architecture and that type of stuff. But then as I got into change and into technology, I then wanted to learn more around communities practice in its pure essence. I want to learn about mastery in its role when I was a Scrum Master, and then coaching, not just agile coaching, but coaching techniques. So I've gone and joined another community that teaches me purely about coaching and not from a domain specific coaching stance. So there's lots of different things that the communities are, but to really drive home, they are about autonomy, they are about purpose, and they are about mastering your domain. See, Haroon, I could chat for hours about it, but over to you.
Thank you, Shelby. I really enjoyed that. And all of the above, absolutely resonates with me too. And I hope it does for everyone else as well. Shelby, I'm just thinking, can you spotlight me? You would spotlight me. If you can't, don't worry about it. I can ask people. So everyone, for this part of the session now, what I would like from you is to go to if you go to gallery view on Zoom, what you want to do is pin my camera view. So there'll be 3 dots next to my name, or just above my picture on the gallery view, and just do pin. Brilliant, cool. Okay, actually, I can put a spotlight over. Cool. So for this next part, I'm just going to share with you and just check. Can everyone? Is everyone able to see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So people always ask, well, when you're in a community of practice, or if you are, within an organization, or even a social group as well, is, well, what is the value? Why do we need to be part of CFP? Why do we need to invest in these things, these communities of practices? Well, just from experience, I find that there's value in knowledge, and knowledge is definitely a value. When we get people together, magic happens. And I think one of these academics actually mentioned about thinking together. And I think there's a process, I think, called dwindling or something, or indwindling or something like that, which basically means getting people together to solve problems together, not in isolation, and to share knowledge. It really creates an ambience of a growth environment, a cultural shift in what we were used to doing back in Taylorism days, right? And some organizations still exist today, where we have, a stopwatch to measure people and people utilization, and no, you're on this project for 20% and blah, 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 blah. And we really fail to recognize, actually, there is more going on than meets the eye, or that meets the Excel sheet, or the bar chart, or the Gantt chart. And that is the interactions between human beings in organizations, and the power of that, which is more powerful than we actually think. If you look at Google or the World Bank or any big organization, they heavily invest in CFPs. I mean, Google X is an example. Google Maps, the way that it was created is by teams of people that are sparing 20% or 15% of their time, reforming into communities of practices, right? To form a new app, for example, that has changed the way that we go about our everyday life. Some of us, maybe not so much during COVID, right? Because we were home somewhere. I also think there is value. There's an innovation value, creating new ideas, novel ideas, but getting people from different functions or skills or different backgrounds together, forming new ideas, not even deliberately sometimes, but just by chance. There's something magical about that. And if you look at some of the best products in the market, or some of the best services you received, there's probably a chance that it came by chance, because a few blocks of people came together. I can give you a personal story actually. When I worked for an insurance company, marketing, someone from IT and someone from, I think it was data, got together, and they started to share some ideas together, and they formed a group called, the X user group, and it was called the X user group because they didn't know what they were going to do with the data. And there wasn't a project. It was just, a group of 10, 15, data fascinators, right? Who love data lakes and seeing how data, really works together. And they already wanted to, create a culture where people were fascinated by data, and they wanted to make data sexy, however that was. And random people just started to come at lunch and learn sessions in the canteen. They brought free food. The CIO invested money, lunches for free. It was only £200 or £100, but what it started to do is create this kind of environment where growth mindset and coming together, agnostic of where you're from, which department you're from, to grow your ideas became the norm. They basically end up turning up a new product, by the way, called multi-car, which basically means insuring a product for more than one vehicle. And that was a big insurance company. And they made multi-million-pound money, right? Just from that user group, or just from that community practice. Efficiency is also a thing. A lot of executives, leaders, senior managers are like, well, why are you going to that meeting? Why are you going to that forum? And I used to always, battle sometime many, many years ago. Not so much now. It's become the norm in some organizations. They've already grown to it. But there's efficiency in it, right? Whereby when you get people together, oh, actually, I've done this stuff before. I've already looked into this problem before. Should we solve the problem together now? Can I share some knowledge, some tacit knowledge? And tacit knowledge, is so valuable. And you might go down the wrong initiative sometime, or the wrong discussion sometime. And it's okay to do that. And it's okay to share conversations with people that are of a similar, function, or a similar, a domain, or even different domains coming together. There's value in doing that. There's a commercial value, as I mentioned, new products being generated, return on investment, people spending an hour a month. We used to do timesheets, I think it was this. I don't know why we used to even do it. It's such a waste of time. But we used to say that every single employee in a unnamed company would spend 2 hours a month. So we actually negotiated with the executive to say, look, give us an hour a month and we show you what we can do. And guess what we did? Within a month, we had an innovation day. It's very, I know, careless, right? But we just had to get some kind of a movement, right, or flow to get people bought into, not even bought into, but share our idea, share our passion. And so what we did in this digital department, unnamed company, is they were so brave that the leaders really bought onto it, and they had a innovation day every 2 sprints. So every 4 weeks, or every 4 sprints. So every 2 months, there would be an innovation day for the entire organization of 500 people. And what they would have to do is get a post-it like this and say, this is what my experiment is, or this is what my innovation experiment is. And they have to put in a hypothesis experiment, some outcomes, and how they're going to test it. And what you could do, the recommendation was to pair up and do a bit of mobbing, right? Mob programming. I don't like the mobbing, but ensemble, if you like, right? And to work with cross-functional people that you never would work with every day, and just team up with them, get to know what their best, tea is, or whatever it is, and experiment. And from there, we decided to get more products and more ideas forming. We had 100 new ideas every 4 sprints, right, across the organization. How wonderful is that? Product owners were chuffed. We got new ways of doing things. We got new user insights, a new analytical method, and new, scraping data off of the screen kind of stuff, right? Weird stuff like that emerged, and it was all emergent. My favorite value, in my humble opinion, is this one, which is employee value. It is always undermined, almost recognized. This heartfulness, right, in corporations, almost undervalued. And I find in organizations, we've lost that. I think COVID's probably brought us back a little bit. We now talk about mental health and well-being. Shelby talked about a sense of purpose, autonomy, mastery. And I think love, we don't mention the word love in corporations no more, or we never did anyway, right? Only certain organizations like the Happy Manifesto and folks like that who are brave enough and courageous enough to come forward and say, actually, there's value in employees. I think Richard Branson recently said that if you look after your employees, the products just flow, or something to that effect. Don't quote me on that right now. But it's something to that effect, right? If you look after your people, the people that create and generate value, the people that really matter, human beings, right? That, steer the system, steer the processes, we can create an environment, an ecosystem of love. And what that does is profound impacts. This is something that Deming talked about, as well, about how you look after the workers, and I think it's in Turn the Ship Around, a beautiful book, those of you who have not read it, of Captain David Marquette, and he talks about how you should, develop practices and information processes where you delve, authority, to where the information needs to land. Let people take decisions about their own decisions. Don't push up towards leadership and management. Let these communities, grow, and let people make their own decisions. And employee value for me is at the heart of communities of practice. I'm going to leave you one thing, and then I'll maybe pass over to breakout rooms. But this is something that's in academia, and it's something that really is quite akin to communities of practice. And this circle or donut, it's called a value creation donut, and you can check up online. Etienne Wenger is a big champion of this stuff, and you can actually join the circle of donut anywhere in this maturity model. I don't like the word maturity, because maturity means you become hardened. I like immaturity models because it means that you're young and you continuously are dynamic and you change tact and description. But if you want to have a look at this stuff, I won't go into it now, but it looks something like this. And there's a constant churn right across the circle of donut. And when you get to practices, that's where things harden up a bit, where you become better and better over time, and things really start to change up a bit. So I think that's my part done. I feel. Do share your thoughts in the chat. Do share your thoughts even after. So this is the part where we go back into interaction mode, because you probably don't want to hear me too much or for too long. So I'm just looking at time. I think we should maybe have about 6 minutes for this one, Shelby. Maybe not too long. But if we can go into breakout rooms of say 4 people, and the question really, I think most of the people already answered it, which is on slide number 3. I'll just share the link again, which is how do we cultivate environments to embrace communities of practice? It's a scary thing for a lot of people, and how do they get the manager to sign off things and they can go to a meeting or a forum, right, where they can meet other people, other human beings, virtually or remotely, lean coffees, open space type stuff. So do share your thoughts on that. I'm just thinking out loud here, Shelby. Should we go into breakout rooms, or should we just do it as a shared mural on Jamboard, and we can just almost just contribute to it, and in silence just observe it and just see what we want to take away?
Yeah, and then we do need just to quickly go back over just did we ever discuss on the Jamboard the question number 3, and just make sure that we cover that off as well, because I don't think we did it previously. I think we skipped, so thanks to Brad to bringing that to our attention. No, I'm more than happy for us to do it openly or breakout rooms. Let's do
that. Do you know what? This is the beauty of what we're doing, isn't it? We've changed the agenda about twice already, right? Which is beautiful. That's what it's all about, emergent agenda, right? So I'm just going to share my screen for those of you who can't see. I've shared the link of the Jamboard. Just share some reflections about how do we cultivate environments to embrace COPs, practices. Is there any bold action? Is there one bold idea that you would like to take away? I mean, you don't have to share it if you don't want to. It's quite nice to, but if you don't want to, that's okay as well. And we'll just give you about, should we say 1 minute, and in silence, just share whatever comes to mind, or maybe not in silence, but if you want to share it verbally, just share it. Open your mic and share what you've got to say.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
absolutely.
So parts of this question made me think back to, I think it was Malcolm Gladwell's book, The Tipping Point.
Yep.
Where he talks about, I'll see if I remember it. Mavens, connectors, and what's the third one? Salesmen?
Yeah.
Or something. Does that relate directly to this, or is this incidental, or is it depend on what we decide in the conversation?
I think it can be incidental. I also think that it can be on purpose as well, because we do put people into specific domains. If we're talking around, if we look at Michael Tippin's point about the tipping point of where people sit in those arenas. We do that. It would happen naturally by default here because we've chosen it. I'd like to think more that community practice allow you to go to your own path rather than us telling you which path that you're on. And I think that's a big sway for the organisations, because quite often people will join an organisation to do one job and then we'll try to take them down a certain route. And actually what we should do is get them to be more masters of what they actually, what they, you know, what their love is. Because I think if you do what you love and you're passionate about it, you will have more mastery about it, which will create more autonomy. That's my thought.
Sort of feel like there's two parts of it. I suppose some people are able to start a COP all on their own, but in my personal experience, usually had to get together some small inner circle of folks who kind of think, yeah, that's a good idea, let's do this. And then together we need to brainstorm about the question on the post-it.
Because, you know, sometimes it only just takes one person to set it up and run with it, and then other times you do need that army, what I call an army of people behind you that also have an intent around it and see the benefits.
Army makes me think of recruitment.
Yeah, it does. But you would automatically, so for example, when I go into work, I have one Scrum Master that is all over this, who loves community practice, and the other Scrum Master is not so engaged. However, Tom has literally day in, day out, I've read this book, I do this, I do that. And by osmosis and just by connection, he's kind of, you know, created that with Jack. And Jack is engaging, he's having those conversations now with Tom. So what book is that about? What did you do there? And so by default, he's learning. So it can happen that way. If you were a leader inside your organization and you were open to setting up communities practice, I think they're really great for your organization, because they reaffirm the foundations, they help you grow, you have better connected people. Although I do appreciate that if you are the person taking that to your executive board or to the people that maybe control the organization and think they're a waste of time, you do need to quantify it in what's the time, what's the impact of the people, and what's the monetary value. And actually sometimes there is no monetary value, more that it's you're losing an hour but you'll gain so much more by having people be invested in learning and sharing, which in turn helps you grow, because they're learning more about their domain, which is what they do for you on a daily basis anyhow.
I'm inside an organization, I think I probably need, or maybe just want, some kind of sponsor or sponsorship.
Yeah, I mean, it's really good inside your organization if you have somebody that really wants to sponsor it and believes that learning and sort of learning about a domain is high priority to them, because then you do get that ultimate buy-in. If you don't, you might spend days or weeks trying to almost become that salesperson, as we just talked about, to sell it to them and the benefits.
I'm just going to share the donut circle where I stole it from, or borrowed it from, I learned it from. So I'll just put a link in the
Donuts, sometimes food helps.
Oh, definitely. And somebody said, thinking of donuts, I definitely am now.
Do you know what? I'm actually going to, after this meetup, I think I need to go to like a retail outlet and definitely get some.
Well, and given today, at least in my time zone, it needs to be punchkis, right?
Nice, lovely. By the way, I'm just going to share my screen again because I had to quickly just copy and paste something. Was there anything else? Was there any other questions? So, you know, were there any other questions that you've got? Any other observations? I'm just going to share. Oops, wrong one. What's the problem when I share screens? I always share the wrong screen.
I think there was a question in the chat around how do you really get them to, you know, set up, and how do you get them across the organization. That is really hard. I recommend, so as I said, I recommend you find another person that's kind of got the same interest to you, and then maybe take some of your own time with inside your, you know, sit down over lunch and have that conversation. Right, well, we really think this is a benefit. So what is the benefit to the organization? Well, the benefit is that shared mastery purpose, ideas, create a backlog, and then sell it back. You almost then do you have to do that bit of selling back to get your champion or your sponsor on board and say, right, so this is what it does. This is what it can give to you for your people, for your organization. It can give you, you know, knowledge depth, cross-functional people. You know, you don't really need no money. All you need to give us time. But in that time, in turn, we will do this, and then go about creating a backlog and putting events in people's diaries and really radiate that information out. I think that's one of the biggest keys also of a good community practice is sharing that knowledge that you've learned outwards as well as inwards, and posting it somewhere. Do a blog post about it inside your organization, put it up on your information radiator, share it with those people, and people will then, there's never a truer saying, if you build it, they will come.
Yeah,
and they will come.
Absolutely. But there's some really great observations. I love Brad's one, which is knowledge creating companies. Takeuchi mentioned it, and Takeuchi, of course, is, you know, the chap with Nanaka who created or first came up with the metaphor for Scrum, I believe, right? And Learning Organizations by Peter Senge, I think his name is, and absolutely. There was a question, I think, I'm just going up because I'm just mindful about time, but also I want to ensure that we have answered as many questions that people may have had in the start. So there was a question about communities of interest versus communities of practice. I don't know if we've actually answered that or not. Any thoughts on why and how to distinguish between types of communities in that way? COIs versus COPs, or communities of practice versus CO. I don't know.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that, Shelby? I mean,
yeah. So like, as I said, I think I might have said it earlier on. So the main difference is an interest is you can have an interest in anything, but you're not actually practicing it, and that's what differentiates a community practice. You will actually practice what you physically are telling people, or you're speaking about, or you're learning about. You do it in your day job. You do it as a hobby. It's something that you physically actively take part. Where an interest, as I said, I have an interest inside mental health, but I do not go to I don't go to learn about it. I have not shared it. My interest is in the concept that how it impacts people, rather than me wanting to go and learn the ins and outs of what a typical, you know, what's a type of, you know, is it depression, is it OCD from a mental perspective.
Lovely. And I think Bobby's also, I think, or someone else has also replied to that, which is brilliant. I think Brad also replied to that, which is similar to what you just mentioned as well, Shelby, which is lovely. Someone asked about how to create and facilitate multiple, you know, COPs. And I think we've also touched upon that, isn't it? About getting a sponsor, getting some champions involved, getting it almost. I mean, for every change, you know, initiative. When I mean change, I don't mean a project. I mean anything which requires some form of culture shift or change of an idea or bringing in a new idea. It always requires a core set of people initially to give it the ignition, really, that engine, and thereafter you just got to see it blossom like the rose tree. You know, right, Charlie?
I love that. Yeah. But yeah, to facilitate multiple COPs is really hard as a single person. So the way I've done that in previous organization is I've kind of been like almost a chief product owner, and I've said I want 12 domains, and those 12 domains need to be, you know, testing. What I was very purposeful, and when I did this, I was like, right, so I have a testing domain, I have a Scrum Master, I have a BA, I have project management, I have a PMO domain, I have you know, UX domain. And what I want from you then as my product owners is for you to all have your single sessions, but I want a community practice day. And I physically managed to get my organization, quite a big bank in the UK, Barclays actually, to physically let me take up to 1,000 people every month off site. Right. And we would split it in a way that in the morning it would be about us sharing and practicing within our domain, but on the understanding then that the rest of the afternoon sessions, they were about sharing outwards for that learning. So that was the sell. The sell was, I am not only going to give you a day of, you know, it's a day of training, and to quantify that then into what that means in monetary is that you are going to get better trained people. You're going to get more support for your organization because you're allowing them the freedom to come, you know, to do their purpose and their mastery. And your money back is they are going to be more committed to you in time, and more, you know, their quality is going to be better because they're more focused, because they've got an intent for the product that you're selling, because you've afforded them X, Y, Z.
I'm so glad you said that. Actually, that's a great example of how you can take an idea and run with it, and then feed that back. I think it's that feedback loop, isn't it?
Yeah.
Back to the organization, sponsors, or leadership, not in a inhumane way or in a command and control way, but just to to verify, validate, and just say we're looking to ask for forgiveness and not seeking permission. We're going to do this thing, and we're going to feed back about the outcomes of what we've done, and we like to share that learning and tell the stories. I think storytelling. In fact, a good friend of mine on this call, Charlotte, we just mentioned it. Some of his communities of practice are emergent.
Yeah.
Like the storytelling session that he does. Which is absolutely fascinating for those of you who want to know about storytelling. But that was a community of practice that I've just randomly, decided to go to. Ish had a question. Ishfaq had a question about: have you or anyone on the call been part of a COP that is business related rather than agile or tech related? Do they exist? And is this the next step of a COP? I could probably briefly help answer that. What I'm going to do deliberately is help just introduce something, what I've done, what I'm doing actually this week. And I'm going to open up to the floor for anyone else with any ideas, or Shelby, if you've got anything to say about this topic. So a retail national chain has invited me to their community of practice. They don't just talk about Agile, by the way, but they've made it into a tech talk, business talk, tech talk. And they called it the Business Tech Talk Conference or something like that. Not even conference, but Business Tech Talk Lightning something, right? And what they used to do before is they used to do a weekly, or I think every fortnight or every month, where they used to force people, and that's probably not the right thing to do. They used to put it in everyone's calendar of whoever's in digital 1,000 people nationally would have to, they'd get a calendar invite, right? Of 1 hour to go to a session, all paid for. Sponsors all okay with that, and they learn about a particular thing, right? But then what happened? They decided that actually we're not going to force people no more. That's not really right. So we're going to have a self-service option. So if you want to go to this talk, it's for everyone across the different domains around business and technology departments, and they shouldn't even exist. It should just be called business or one department, and they started to do it. And I'm invited as a speaker to speak about something on Thursday. So their community of practice grew internally, and now they're bringing external speakers into the community of practice to get new innovative ideas about the way that they want to shift, project thinking to product thinking, for example. There's a talk I'm doing this week around on their community of practice. So yes, it does exist, and it's happening everywhere.
Yes. I know the NHS are very much, they talk around medical practices, are very much got their own. I know somebody that's currently working for the NHS Wales. They have communities where they meet and talk around, at the moment it's COVID, so it's infections. I know a friend of mine is a biochemist. She talks around practices around how to extract DNA from samples, etc., and they have their practice. They are all in different ways, shapes and forms. And what I really kind of want everybody to take away from this session is that actually they are a secret service. They're not only to yourself because they bring you more in-depth knowledge, but they are to your organization that you're in. So if you do have a purpose and you are passionate about it, please go back into your communities, go back into your workplace and your organizations, and really try to harness that for yourself, because the offset is far greater than not doing that learning, sharing, caring, supporting motion of a good community.
Lovely. So I'm just looking at the time. It's just gone 7:29. So given that we are observers of the time box and we are facilitators of time boxes right now in our day job as well, and our probably family lives as well, was there anything else, Shelby, that we want to do before we thank everyone for the collaboration and for the courage to come here today and to share some insights with us?
No, just from my perspective, as I said, if you really, really are passionate about whatever it is that you have a domain knowledge about, please go share it. It can only make us a better community, not only in the Agile realm, but also in other communities that you're involved in, whether that be baking cakes or, going to your children's recitals. Please go support, share, and then try to cultivate that to your organization as well, what that means to them, how it can support them and help you also grow.
Nice. Can I do a shameless plug?
Of course you can.
So those of you who are familiar with the Agile 20 Reflect Festival, it's a fantastic global, I would call it, maybe it's not a campaign, but it's a free not-for-profit thing. There will be a follow-up, not even a follow-up, but another talk on Thursday, the 18th of February. Have a look at the meetup.com website, look at the Agile 20 Reflect Festival meetup group, and there's an event called the Enigma of Agile. It's actually titled the Global Community Agile Clinic, and there's Freya, Anne-Marie, and me who will be doing a panel hosting gamified version of Community of Practice. So we're going to be playing a game as a group, right? So you're invited to play a game with us, and I'll give you a clue. It may involve some traditional game, and it's a board game. We virtualized it and we've agilified it, if that's even a word, but in the context of communities of practice. So if you're curious to know what those secrets are, then come to Thursday, the 18th of February at 6 p.m. GMT and learn about those secrets too with us. And I want to thank all of you. I want to thank my co-host first and foremost, who's been an absolute delight to watch. Actually, I've learned so much from her, just experience in the session and before. And I hope to continue being part of many communities of practices with most of you as well. Shelby, anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just thank you for all coming to the Agile 20 Reflect Festival. The one thing that Scott and myself as a trustee really want to say to you all is thank you very much. You have helped us create this community of practice, and we are forever in your debt for that. Please also come along to the closing ceremony, which is also on the 28th. We'd love to have you there. It will be as exciting and dynamic as the opening. But no, thank you very much. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you for listening to me ramble about one of my passions.
Nice, lovely.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much. And feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn or come to the next events if you want. And enjoy your lovely evening, day, or morning, or night, depending on where you are. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Good night, night all.
Thank you. Thanks for the session. It was great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Hey, Haroon. You still there?